this is Cherie Ray. In this podcast episode, we're going to be looking at ruminating. And the topic for today is, are you locked in your ruminating? We want to really explore how ruminating impacts your life both professionally and personally. Hopefully, you'll see how being locked in your ruminating blinds you to fresh opportunities, connection, and newness. I wanted to have this conversation on ruminating because it looks to me like the more free time we have, the more we tend to linger in our minds. You know, the less in our face demands are that tend to engage us in the moment, that require us to be present. And so, like in these times of self quarantine where we don't have possibly as many demands, and then we have I'll say a freer mind, not freer in the sense of less on our mind, but freer in the sense of where it can wander and what that does to our sense of well-being, to our experience of life. So I wanted to talk about ruminating. And so, like, I know what my definition of ruminating is, and I wanted to kind of put that down as a baseline. And so, ruminating for this conversation is, you can say it in a lot of ways, but it's like,
4 new messages and 19 old messages. Message 1.
just checking. So ruminating for this conversation is about, I'll say, grinding on thought, having a lot of, or a constant, a topic possibly that just kind of tends to come back and come back and come back. Now, oftentimes that happens on when we're looking for a solution or we're looking to try to find a resolution to a particular problem. In our innocence, we entertain it a lot. It's on our mind a lot. It's on our mind, kind of just like an app running constantly. It's on. We may not be using it all the time, but it's running. And so that's what I'm referring to as ruminating, about grinding on thought, having a topic on our mind, chewing on it, really believing in our innocence that if I ruminate on it, or you wouldn't even use that word, but if I give it a lot of thought, that's where I'll find my solution. That's where I'll find an answer to this particular situation. And in reality, it's exactly the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. So, what do I mean by exactly the opposite? So, it's like if we understood that our individual intellect, our individual mind, has a whole lot of stored information. Real, made up, factual. But it's pretty much unique to us. It's pretty much unique to our experience of life. What we've seen, what we know, what we've experienced, what we've made up, what people have told us, what's acceptable, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. So if we understand that when we ruminate, we're basically just looking around in what we already know. We're looking around in all the storage warehouses. We're looking around in our cabinets. We're looking in the closets. We're looking around at everything we know. And so if we limit ourselves to just looking in places like our conditioned mind of what we know, it's oftentimes we get very frustrated because there's no solution comes. No solution comes. No fresh ideas come, And So, in addition to that, we want, we want fresh ideas and we want fresh solutions. Now, another way to kind of point at the very innocence and simplicity of ruminating is, and I think this is something that's invisible, that's not, we don't see it as optional. And this occurred to me just this week about how, and this is the example that came, so I'm going to repeat it. But say, for instance, you have a house guest. All right. Now, this is something we don't know is optional. We have a house guest, and our house guest uh, breaks something, like breaks our coffee pot. All right. Now, we find out after our house guest leaves that they broke our coffee pot. All right. Now, this is this place that doesn't look optional. Now, here's a place where the ruminating can begin. All right. Alrighty. So here's the bottom line: is the coffee pot's broken, and you want a cup of coffee. Now, you can either uh, start to really churn on all the reasons why this shouldn't be happening. B, the rights and wrongs that you didn't want them here in the first place. They didn't tell you it was broken. You're going to tell the next 15 people that you see that you had a house guest that broke your coffee pot, and now you don't know what to do. You can't get coffee, and see. But what we don't realize is that we typically automatically go into these kind of mental gyrations after something happens, and in our innocence, we don't know that's optional. We don't know that we don't have to do that. Because, and the truth is, in our innocence, we churn and churn and churn and ruminate on it, not even calling it rumination, not even seeing it as detrimental to my experience of life. We just see it as like lamenting the events that happen in our life. That's another way of saying ruminating, just lamenting the things that happen in our life. And so, what I think is so much fun to consider is that you could just step over that part, get to Amazon, get to wherever it is you would buy your next coffee pot, hit click and send, and you'll have your next coffee pot. Next. So that's the part that I think is so fascinating, that we don't know we don't have to churn on it, that we could step over it and just do the next thing that occurs to us, which is solve the problem, get another coffee pot, and move on. Now, I see this happen a lot with my clients in the workplace. Say they report to someone, or they have that very challenging coworker in the office, whoever it is, and either I'll make believe it's the person that dominates the meeting. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got one that dominates the meeting. And so what happens is the meeting's over with, but what do? We either go to lunch with somebody else in the office and we go on and on and on about how so and so dominates the meeting, how much we can't get things done, how they're the problem in the cog in the wheel. all of these things. And we don't realize that the only cost to that is to your sense of okayness, your resilience, your burnout. You know that you're allowing your ruminations to to rob you of the present moment. And that sounds kind of woo-woo, except here's another opportunity. It's like you could have a third person coming to lunch. If you didn't spend that time lamenting the person that dominates the meeting and the conversation goes who knows where, the other person may have an opportunity that you're open to that's not even available or has space to be in the conversation because you're arguing with your perception of what should be happening or what is not happening. Now, and we'll miss those opportunities. If you're lamenting this, you may see that there is somebody over there you want to make contact with. You could see you could hear, you could miss a lot of things that you could hear. You would have fresh thinking you would miss because you're giving all your bandwidth to what's not right in your world in this moment. And innocently, we don't know we can just step over it. We could come right back to the present moment. We could get more aliveness because we would be in the moment. We would see these opportunities. We would have a richer connection with whoever it is because we could connect person to person. We don't need to broker this problem child into the conversation. And then you'll see too that in ruminating, it's like if it's not between you and someone else, it when you're oftentimes it happens when people put their head on the pillow. Everything that they've tend to pushed away during the day has kind of come back up, and it wants some of that wants some airplay in your world. Now, we can't really do much about, we can't do anything about what our mind is offering us. But what we can do is start to notice, really start to notice that the more burdened your mind is with all these things you're considering that don't really, that are really optional to consider. And maybe that's the first place to inquire is like when you kind of wake up to how heavy or how burdened your mind is there anything on here that's really optional that you don't have to be considering right now? That might be the first place, because if you're in the present moment, you're going to realize the more you're in the present moment, the less there is to concern yourself with. So I say all that just so as kind of a first step of inquiring about is what's on my mind optional? And if the answer is yes, like it's not happening right here, right now in front of you, it's optional. So that would be the opportunity to get more engaged in this moment and start to loosen or lessen the burden that or the load that your mind is carrying. And it's very simple to see once you kind of get awake to it that the less burden your mind is carrying, the freer you feel in your life and the lighter heartedness you feel and the more carefree you feel. And it's not attached to how your life is unfolding in this moment. It's really 100% attached to how much you've got on your mind. So I wanted to put that out there as, really starting to see that lingering on topics is optional. Entertaining everything that comes into your mind is optional. And in our innocence that, I don't know anybody that doesn't want to feel better more of the time. I don't know anybody that doesn't want to feel better more of the time. So if we really realize that a mind with less burden is going to give me a better experience of life, then we can kind of inquire into it and consider it, So with what I've said, I'd love to hear if you have a question or if even in the topic of ruminating, if it has any resonance for you, even the topic of ruminating.
I have a question.
Great.
Sorry, I look like shit. I'm going to turn the video off in a minute. But anger resulting from a particular event and then the ruminating around it is like a real powerful motivator to action. So I want to just hear what you have to say about that. Does that make sense? It's not really stated as a question, but um, how do you get to where you don't have to have anger in order to motivate yourself to do something that's very difficult for you to do? How can you just do what needs to be done without having to have this emotional store behind it?
And so, does it? I'm curious why it feels like you have to have anger for movement. That's the connection I'm not getting. Tell me more about that.
Because it feels like some of my conditioning has to be broken through in a violent way. It,
And so
I would
and
behave.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
To change the way I would behave.
To change the way you would behave, you need a stimulus, a stimuli or something.
Well, so I am a default people pleaser.
Okay.
That is a very expensive thing to be. And I have got to stop the money drain. So so I don't know. Just curious. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just asking.
I'm curious, do you feel like there's another source of what moves people's lives?
Well, I know other people don't have to be like this,
Well,
but
what does it look like that moves them?
I don't know what moves them. That's what that's what I mean. I don't let me rephrase that. I
Uh-huh.
know what moves them because I know what moves me when I'm not having to do that particular thing about my own condition stuff. But um,
Well, let me ask you that. That's a real good point. What moves you when anger doesn't move you?
well, there's just this energy flow that moves me. Love moves me.
Okay. Okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Now, what's the feeling in your life when love moves you?
Well, the real answer is it sort of moves me without me being in control of it.
Okay. Okay. All right. And what's the feeling you live in when anger moves you?
Anger.
Okay. Okay. So so it's like when you move in anger, your experience of life is at a different quality than when you move in love, from love or inspiration or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I also think that when you move from anger, um, you can destroy more than actually needed to be destroyed. There may
Okay.
be a certain part that does need to be destroyed, but it turns into something bigger that happens that then has its own negative consequences.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah,
So I'm wondering, does it feel possible to move from love even when you're angry?
yeah, it's possible. But then I'm just set up to do the same goddamn thing again
Really?
when when something happens out of the blue, and you know I'm not expecting it,
You're not affecting it? Is that what you said?
but I'm not expecting it.
Oh, expecting it. Okay. All right. And so when you say if something happens out of the blue, just something out of the blue that makes you upset, I mean, that you get angry about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Does that feel pretty much, that feels pretty normal to me that things happen that we get angry about.
Right.
I don't think we can avoid that.
Okay. So,
You know what I mean? So, but my point being is like, okay, here's the deal. It's like, yeah, we're going to have moments of upset and we're going to get angry. Now, I think the leverage might be, do you have to take action when you're angry?
no.
Okay. So, if you feel like, or you look at your felt sense of your own experience of life, you know, and if you have a feeling like, gosh, if I move from anger, I might make change, but there could be more destruction than necessary.
Yeah.
All right. And then that feels like That doesn't feel so great either.
It feels out of control. I mean, okay, so I'll give you a circumstance. This isn't my current circumstance, but in the past, you
Hmm.
know, people run into your car.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I get out and I'm really nice and polite and da da da. The last time it happened, though, I did have the wherewithal to start taking pictures of their license plate and their drivers, even though I had never done that before because it hadn't happened to me since the advent of cell phones. And then it turned out the guy was a dishonorable person, shall we say.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, so I ended up having to pay the deductible for my insurance instead of him paying it.
Hmm.
So that cost me money. Now I'm not sure if I had been a jerk to him that it still wouldn't. I mean, it still would have cost me money whether it was honorable or not because I had all that stuff on my phone, right?
Hmm.
But sometimes I just feel like I ought to be meaner. Sometimes I feel like I ought to be more suspicious of people.
Mm.
One of my brothers, the first words out of his mouth, no matter what happens, is, "Well, be careful because they're all out to screw you."
Hmm. Hmm.
And
So, so
I
let's
need to.
well, let's just check in with that. It's like if you check in with like the bottom line of we're talking about is like what feeling do you want to live in more of the time and what takes you away from that? And in this conversation, we're using ruminating as just an example. So it's like, okay, now if I live behind the lens of watch out, they're all out to screw me, how does that feel?
Terrible.
Terrible, terrible. And I want to live in a better feeling more of the time. Okay? So it's like that that does not protect me from anything that life has to offer.
Maybe. It protects you from certain things. It ruins everything else, though.
Well, I don't know if it protects you from anything because things happen. You know, cars get hit, people run red lights, stuff like that. It's like it doesn't protect you from just uninvited events into your life. It doesn't change. It doesn't prevent that at all. You know, so it doesn't change the nature of life, but it certainly does have you living in kind of stinky soup
Yeah.
in between looking to be validated about they're out to get you.
Yeah.
All right. So I say that. So in that place of when you got out of the car, you were clear minded.
Because I wasn't upset. I was just like,
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So you were clear minded. You were not upset. And in that clear mindedness, your wisdom, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, said grab your phone and start taking some pictures. All right. I want you to see that when you're clear minded, you have more of your wisdom available to you. When we're angry, which is a temporary state of being, we basically, I like to use it, it's a joke, but not a very good one, that we've lost our mind.
yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to make choices when I'm angry because, first of all, it's fleeting. You know, it's going to last longer than I want, but it's still fleeting. And my highest wisdom is not available to me when I've swept away in my anger. So it's like, if it's the best you can do, it's like if I don't have to make a decision right now, I'm going to wait until I get recentered and grounded because I don't have access to good information when I'm yanked up.
Okay. So I can, um, I'm very good at not doing anything that would hurt anyone else, but I want to hurt someone. So how can I hurt someone without actually hurting them? You know, how do I get this shit out of my body?
Well, what if that's not up to you? What if you could just be present and let that emotion pass through? Your intellect is not needed to manage upset.
Okay.
Your intellect will prolong your upset.
Okay. So basically, you just wait.
Well, it's kind of a cliche term in this circle, but it's like, okay, how can I get more comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Mhm.
Because if you watch little kids, they have tremendous upset. They don't even consider using their head because it's not, loaded up with all we've got loaded up in it. And turn to a child doesn't turn to its intellect and say, what should I do about this? I have to do something to feel better. It's like, no, they just kind of flail. You know what I mean? Kick the ground or, scream or whatever they do. But then it's like their resilience brings them right back up. So see, that's another kind of very innocent, um, and totally innocent understanding for a lot of people that they have to take action to feel better. If we just understood that when I'm angry, I don't make good decisions, and it's like I don't have access to higher levels of thought when I'm upset.
Okay. Okay.
You just don't have it. You know, you just don't have it. Now, but your wisdom will offer you something. You know what I mean? In that moment, it will offer you something that doesn't have to bring destruction to anything, It might be take a walk. It might be sit down and write. It might be beat the bed with a tennis racket, I mean, whatever it is, but you don't need a strategy to get your anger to move on. You don't need a strategy.
Mhm.
If you get more present in the moment, something fresh will occur to you, but it may never occur to you again. You see what I mean? If you're really present, your wisdom will give you something that's a perfect fit for that moment, but don't put it in your pocket. Just know that your wisdom will always serve up, will always serve up. And so say down like in that place of like this person hit your car, if if we ruminate between every single call to the insurance company, about this SOB and this, that's like your feeling state goes down,
Mhm.
you know? And we tell the next five people, when the minute they say that, where's your car? It's like, well, let me tell you where am I, your feeling state's going to drop. Anything we're really churning on is like, it benefits us to give it less of our attention. And people will say, oh, you're in denial. You don't care. It's like, no, no, no. I'm not in denial. I'm dealing with the next thing that needs to happen. I'm just not allowing myself to sit in that cold bath water until it gets resolved.
Mhm. Okay. Okay.
And truly, our mind makes up that the anger will never pass.
Mhm.
Our mind makes up and that's not true at all. If you observe kids, it's just not true at all.
Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate you talking about it, and um, I'll just keep thinking about that. And
Or
yeah,
not, or
or
not.
not. I'm not sitting on my head. Give me something more painful to happen that I can think about that.
Yeah, I just like the idea of it's optional not to consider those things that weigh heavy on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
where the leverage is. You don't have to consider it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you so much. I
you
appreciate
bet. You bet. Yep. Yes, ma'am. Marsha.
Gosh, what a great discussion. At first, I was kind of confused when you were talking because I do another process that talks about ruminating. And it sounds like you're talking about a lot of the work, like I do a lot of Byron Katie work, and it's all about, being present and But this, what she just talked about, is kind of exactly what I'm going through, but the opposite. Like, my thing is, I'm too much of a bitch, but it doesn't really make it any better to be more of a bitch or to be too nice, because you still have the same. So what I do is just, I think because I'm a single old woman, that I have to approach a situation guns out, like up here. So I'm kind of at war with my local post office. And I've gone in there just steaming mad. Like, I dress a certain way. I wear, I go in there like all like raw, because I don't get my mail. And I just feel so like it's so not right. Like, I feel so like the mail service should work, you know. And anyway, I went through this war with them a year ago or so, and my parents sent me an email with a package tracker, and it says package was dropped off on your front porch at 5:30. I went outside. It's not on my front porch. They put it on somebody else's porch, and I was so upset. Like, I went, I just I let go of it. But this morning I decided I'd go to, and I walked around, and it was more like, I don't know. And I dropped it, because I know the result of going to war with the post office. It didn't make any difference.
Mm-hmm.
The outcome was still the same. A month or two later, I get the mail, but it takes a month or two. So I hate my post office. I'm probably going to move out of this apartment complex because of the delivery. This is like a really expensive neighborhood I live in. And it's like, but you're right. Like, the anger, like, I don't have the childhood experience you're talking about. Like, I don't remember it. I don't think I got to blow off steam and stuff. But when I have anger, it terrifies me, and I feel like it's permanent. And I have to I have to go fix something for it to go. I have to go sue this post office to fix my anger.
Right, right, right,
That's all.
right. And that's human. That's not even unique to you. You know that every time I'll say anger, every time we're in a low mood or we're having an off day, we all our mind kind of convinces us that this isn't going to move on. Because I didn't want it for a second, much less for 10 minutes, much less for a day. You just don't want it.
I decided I'm just going to forget about it, and it's probably going to show up today or never.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But
Mhm.
either way, we don't know where the package is. But either way, you want to be clear for your next step. In between actions, you see what I mean? In between actions, we don't realize it's optional to suffer in between actions. It's like we can take that piece out of the equation. It's like, whoa, you mean once we see that it is a benefit to us not to churn on it, not to ruminate on it, that 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 a fresh idea is not going to come to me if I churn on it between actions. If your mind gets free, you're going to get a fresh action. Or, you know, the only thing that comes to you is to go back down and stand in line until the postmaster comes out and talks to you, whatever it is. But you don't need to have your experience of life de-escalate, I guess, or deteriorate because something outside of you is happening.
Yeah, you're right. I still may go take action. I don't have to bring all that battle axe energy, which is
No.
something I've been really cultivating since I've been older. Because you cannot be a sweet, nice 60-year-old lady and moving in the world by yourself. You can't, like, I'm not gonna, that doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for me.
Well, but I want you to even to consider it's like wow, wow. Even just in this conversation, like the person that just spoke felt like they needed to get guns out for things to work. Now, in your state of mind, you're like, man, I'm carrying guns out and it's not working. So both of those things are not letting you be present with your highest wisdom. You see what I mean? There's like a filter. There's a total filter between us and life when we think I got to go guns out to get something done. Well, I went guns out and nothing got done.
Sometimes I have to. I mean, sometimes it's the only thing that's worked.
But that would come to you in the moment. Do you see what I
Yeah.
mean? That would
Yeah.
come to you in the moment. It's like you want to be clear for whatever. And so what? I'm not saying kumbaya. We don't live in a kumbaya world, but it's like if you're completely
Maybe
clear.
guns out is probably not a good expression. It's probably more like um, I have to be.
I have to have my bitch
I
face
have to
on or
be.
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Is that what it feels like? Like
Squeaky wheels.
you have to be, you have to have an agenda or
I
a
I
strategy.
badger I badger places until I get what I want. I
Okay.
I badger. I badger. Yeah.
Okay. All right. But I'm kind of coming back and going, so what if you do? So what? But you could be freer thinking about any
Mm.
situation if you didn't hold on to like I have to be a badger to get this done. It's like just show up. You see what I mean? Just show up, and if you need to be a badger, you'll be the badger. If
Well, they flinch every time I walk into that post office. Everybody's just flinches. So
but I want to come back to that just so you see. It's like wait a minute, I don't have to work that hard. We don't have to work that hard. We don't have to grind on fill our head with stuff that I would need to be okay to navigate life. You have a
yeah,
higher wisdom that's available to you at every single moment that will feed you in the moment when you need it.
yeah, I get that. And sometimes it feels so good because it's so pure.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
it's so relevant to the moment.
Yeah.
So you can drop agendas and drop strategies and while they're well-meaning and they're innocent that if I really show up, engage with whatever it is that needs to be done and try to keep my stories out of it of what's required of me or what's happening with them, something fresh is going to come along. Now, one time this story keeps coming to mind because it was like just like this thing, like like when you think, oh, if I'm free minded, I'm expected to be zenned out and kumbaya, and no, and I was traveling with a what I considered a highly elevated spiritual teacher, in Hawaii one time, and this bellman was not getting her instructions, you know? And I am telling you, she had these 3 bags that she wanted taken from A to B, and I'll never forget his name. Manny wasn't getting the instructions. I mean, she got in his face. She grabbed him by the shoulders. She directed his attention. I mean, as firm and blunt to where the rest of us kind of came up off the ground because we had held this little perception in our mind that you're elevated in a spiritual being. You don't you know kick ass and take names. She did it.
Well, I wouldn't want to be a spiritual being then.
No, no, but to my point, like it was like in that moment, she's that present of a person. In that moment, that was what required, and she did it and didn't give it a second thought. Yes.
What occurs to me in listening to some of this is for me, and I'll throw it out there, but ruminating is a habit.
Absolutely.
It's
Innocent
like
habit.
it's like thinking you have to be a certain way because you're a certain age. That's habitual thinking too, because
Absolutely.
I'm a sweet, nice 65-year-old lady and I go in asking everybody for help, you know? And if that doesn't work, then I go, okay, I'll think about what to do next. And maybe, but I had a thing that started again the other day, and I almost actually felt the tracks in my brain because isn't that a physical thing? Like we run down a path of thought so often that it actually creates a channel in our brain. So it just goes, and then we have to make new channels in our brain to have new think, to make new thinking habitual.
To form a new habit for
To form
sure.
a new habit. So if ruminating, which in my life, ruminating, I learned it as a kid, ruminating was an action. And by ruminating to other people, it meant that you were caring about it, or worry was an action,
Mm-hmm.
it had some sort of importance.
Mm-hmm. A
And
value. It had some value.
it had value, and it meant that you were concerned and cared and were involved, and but it didn't change anything. And it's only been in the last few years that I've realized how bad it made me feel, that it
Correct.
and I caught myself the other day wanting to fall into the ruminating about this one particular non-changeable situation, and I could feel like the dent in my brain. I went, oh, it just slipped into it. So it's almost like you have to really be aware when it starts
Well, I
to.
think even that. Well, I think what woke you up to it. What woke you up to
Mhm,
like, ooh, that was that higher intelligence that's available to you when you're more present.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
A fresh thought comes to mind about, ooh, ooh. I don't know if that's helpful, but something wakes you up. And life is a series of opportunities to wake up to all of this stuff that we've just innocently fallen into.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, and when you said that too, I thought it was so funny. It was like, gosh, I never thought about this. But when you mentioned that example, it was like, when you're little and you get sent into your room to think about what you've done. I was like, I don't think they meant it as in quiet reflection. I think it was like, you need to go, really.
Ruminate on what you did.
Yes, yes. And really soak in your wrongness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you got approval for that, then it just reinforced it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it really sent you to your head again and again and again to find a solution. It's like, oh my gosh.
Well, and I think that our society, as we're brought up, we are taught to believe that we should be able to figure out a solution to everything.
Right, right.
We
And
should
and
just be able to figure it out.
right. And that it's up to us and only us with what I have
Yeah.
inside my head,
Yeah.
not what's available from all intelligence available to us. You see what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. Now I do.
Yeah.
I didn't when I was younger. So.
No, me either. Me either. The responsibility of solving it all on my own was kept me in a grabbing mentality of God. I got to learn more because I don't have what it takes. But it's like, oh wait, au contraire. You were born with what you will need. You have what it takes, but we've gotten far, far away from it.
Yeah, I never knew that was even an option.
No, me either.
Yeah. You were just supposed to figure it out. And if not, then you just were too stupid.
Right. And you weren't good enough. And if you had the right agenda and the right strategy, you wouldn't get duped and you'd be in the ahead of the line and you'd be the smart one. Well, I mean, we make up lots of stuff, crazy, innocent stuff, but none of
Yeah.
it's true.
One of my favorite things to say now is I don't know.
Isn't
Because
that
that
great?
was, I mean, you could just get drugged down the hall for saying you didn't know when you were a little kid. But how could you know anything when you were a little kid? But I learned never say those 3 words. That was just, oh my God, that was just the worst thing to say. And now I look at people and go, I don't know. Let me ask Google, you know?
End of story, you know. You don't
Yeah.
even, hopefully you don't take it on,
Yeah.
which would be, again, the place where the ruminating would start, that you would take it on as yours to solve.
Hmm.
My
Hmm.
therapist called when Nancy was talking about those routes, the how your brain is wired a certain way that we
Hmm.
learn. My therapist calls those trauma tracks. And you're right, you can feel it when you're in them. Like you said, you could feel the dent in your head. I start feeling this tightness in my, like a sick feeling in my throat, and I know I'm in a trauma track, and I just, you know, get present so I can get, because I know I'm going down something I learned that was super unhealthy.
Hmm.
And I
Oh,
think the other part too is like one point I wanted to make is like, in our innocence, I don't believe that we see that we don't have to feel bad about bad things that are happening in the world. You know, it's like, yes, we can take any action that we're
Yeah,
called to take, on, what about any action we may want to do, but it doesn't solve the problem to feel bad about it. But I don't think that's obvious that there can be bad things in the world and I don't have to feel bad about them. Now, since I'm in the business of really wanting people to suffer less, that's important to me because that frees you to feel more of your wholeness and frees your mind from being weighted down by things that you don't have control over. And we ruminate a lot about things we don't have control over, either how a person shows up in the world, how a situation is in the world, how things are moving in the world. It's like, yeah, we don't agree with them, but I don't have to feel bad about them.
Can I just say something,
Yes,
Cherie?
please.
It's sort of based on what Marsha had to say about the anger. I just moved to a different place, a condo, 4 weeks ago, and it was being renovated by a flip organization who weren't paying the sewerage bills, who weren't paying this bill, that bill, whatever, for a whole year that they were working on it. So I move in and I get this astronomical sewer and water bill, which is not mine. And my immediate reaction always to everything that is not my fault, not it's not me, it's not, is to do the anger thing. And my kids just keep saying, Mom, calm down, let it go, just calm down. So I purposely, there was 2 different numbers to call. Of course, the government, because they're going to stop you being able to flush your toilet because this is a dinging notice from a organization that wants to collect funds. And here I just moved into the place, so it was obviously not me, but I felt yes, they would pinpointed me, and I had to pay for this. So I was, and I go, no, no, come on, try and approach this in a very different way, and I did, and the whole conversation went in a very different direction than the post office man would have. And but at the end of it, I wasn't all tied up in anger and for the rest of the day. It had totally, oh, that went well. That gave me a much happier vibe. And they corrected the problem and that sort of thing. But if I had kept on the anger thing, she would have got angry. She probably would have said, well, you have to pay for the whole thing, whatever. And I would still be sitting here ruminating on that anger. And so now, yeah, but it takes a lot of patience to not just suddenly do the flip out anger thing, because that's so easy for me to do. It's sort of being right, whereas, I'm right and you're wrong, sort of thing.
Mhm.
But I was surprised. I was more surprised at how I felt at the end of the conversation. So much lighter and so much freer, you know. And like Marcia, because of what I'd done in the post office, I would feel awful going into the post office all the time. So that's just carrying on that vibe and that feeling. And so you have to move because and yeah, I mean, I empathize. I know exactly because I've been in those situations, but I am trying to be
That's
bring it
great.
with kindness. What
Well,
is that
and,
saying?
and freer minded versus it's your fault. I mean, we all have a kind of a flavor. Like when we get rattled, it's like in your situation, it's like your fault, or like I'm to blame for this, and then we come out swinging and defending ourselves, and it's like,
Yeah.
wait, if you clear your mind, it's like there's nobody in your face saying this is your fault, But we have these default places where our mind goes, uh, gets really busy on things that we would rather not have to deal with.
Yeah. So it was just taking deep breaths, trying to keep the positivity and the friendliness going. Especially when she said, "Oh no, I don't know," And I said, "Oh, but it was hard, but anyway, I will try to do it again another time next
Well,
time.
that's the other part. It's like we have lots of opportunities to,
Yeah,
even hopefully
practice.
through this conversation, if I could bottom line, if through this conversation, if you saw or got an inkling or even got curious that ruminating was detrimental to the feeling you live in and it was optional,
Yeah.
I would say that that is enough of a germinated seed to be curious about that you might be open to the next time you hear that grinding in your head,
Yep. Come
Yeah.
a little late, but at least they
Perfect timing.
come.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. I always think, thank you. I didn't leave the planet with that one, Every time I get a fresh insight, it's like, thank you. I didn't leave the planet with it. So,
Mm.
well, I wanted to thank you all for coming to the call, taking time and
Thank you.
tuning in
Thank you.
and just contributing and listening and sharing and being part of community, which I think is so valuable right now, always, but especially now. So,
So Cherie, I guess you won't be going to Taos to doing any of those creative. Well, September's just around the corner.
September is they canceled, so the facility won't open until January. And
Uh,
yeah,
uh,
So sad.
all right. Well, thanks very much.
thank
Great to see you again.
you too. You
Uh,
too. You too.
yeah,
You too. All of
it was
you.
fun. Felt like being back to normal.
It's so great. It's so well. The next time a topic pops in my head, I'll post it, and we'll meet
Yeah,
again. Hopefully, okay.
yeah, great.
Well, be
Okay.
well, stay safe.
Yeah, you
What is it?
too.
I heard the greatest thing out of somebody's mouth. It was what was it? Oh, stay positive, don't test positive. I thought that was great. I thought that was a great saying. I think that's a T-shirt. Stay positive, don't test positive. So, all right, be
So
well. Have
thank
a
you.
great weekend, everybody.